without the static guard. It's there on the left. We have some dry fly hooks, size 10, orange thread, orange poly yarn, some fox squirrel tail, and we have some size tackle in grizzly and brown. We also including here, there's not going to be on the fly, but we're going to use maximum ultra green monofilament, both in 6 and 4 pound test to make our leader. Okay, those materials that we just looked at are right here in the recipe. We list them in the order that they will go on the hook. Thread, orange, body poly yarn, wing is a squirrel tail, and the hackle is a grizzly brown mixed. This is the direction we're going tonight. We call it the roadmap. And it's a furled stonefly with a squirrel wing and a mixed grizzly brown hack. For right now, let's just slip a hook in the vise. So I'm just going to start by right in the middle of the hook, and I'm going to lay down a several turn thread start, I guess you will. It won't even be a real thread base. And let's reach over to the materials area and get our poly yarn. Yeah, there it is. I've already got it stuck in a clip, as you can see. And we'll bring that back over to the vise. And just going to tie it to the hook. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a tag sticking out the front there, and you'll see why here in just a second. Because I want to trim it at a severe angle. And what I'm doing is I'm starting to build my hackle platform, which will be finished in a future step. But you see how I kind of have that all nicely tapered? Okay, continuing to twist. This is getting tighter and tighter. In fact, you can see if I relax it just a little bit, it'll start to kink up really bad. In fact, I shouldn't have done that, but I did. Let me untwist it a little bit. Now I'll twist it back tight again. And now I'm going to lay this, fold it back over, and just lay it in place. And what that does is it builds me a nice furled body. Let me just take this pliers off, and I'll tie this down in place right now. Okay. Now again, I'm going to cut this at a very severe angle so that I'm continuing to build that hackle platform. I want my squirrel tail, when I get through tying it on, I'm going to turn this. I want it to kind of bend over the body rather than just being a lump sticking over the body. I like it to kind of come around the body. The one that I tied earlier, and you can see that I have the hair kind of around the body, if you will, over the top. I just think that looks kind of cool. It doesn't make a difference to any particular thing, but tie this in place, set it for length. And if I just wrap it on the hook like that, wrap around the hook and the material, it'll set there pretty good. But I want you to notice that it will also just be kind of a glob on top of the body. I want that body to kind of spread around just a little bit. So let me back up. Facilitate that is take a loop around the wing first and then bind it into place. Now, here's the spreading part. See my thumbnail right there? Just rear of the anchor wraps of thread. And that moves it around the hook, just like that. Don't do it too much or you'll end up with a space there on top, and you don't want that to happen. All right, now I'm going to trim this again at a very severe angle so that I have a hackle platform on which to wrap my hackle. I still want you to notice that I did end up with a little bit of a hump right here. We call it the hill. And I'll show you how to deal with that so your hackle doesn't slip. All right.
Looks like you needed to leave a little space there too.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and tie on the grizzly and then the brown. All right, grizzly's tied on. It's to the rear. It's Notice that I pulled a little bit of that hackle off. I had a bad spot in the hackle feather and it wanted to, there we go. And it wanted to twist. We're going to start by wrapping the brown and leaving some spaces as I travel forward.
If he hadn't left that space on the stem, Robin, you have a chance of hackle fibers pointing backwards.
Yep. Okay.
This causes, the way he's doing it causes it to be straight up.
Okay, the other thing, and I hadn't left it that way, but I want to point it out now. I moved my thread so that it's hanging at the hill. And because the hackle still might slip. And so what I do is I use the weight of the bobbin and it has to push the thread forward and it keeps the hackle from slipping as I wrap forward until I reach almost the front of the hook, but not all the way to the front of the hook. And I'm going to tie this off, leaving myself space at the front for another turn of grizzly. And also I want you to notice that I'm going to trim my hackle off and leave a bit of a nub sticking up there in the front of that brown. Now, the reason being for that is that I want to have a nice delicate head on this fly. And if you wrap two hackles at once and try to tie them off and get a nice delicate head, it's going to be very difficult. But this way you can, because you're only tying off one hackle that gets built into the head itself. Now I've started out with turns at the back, continuing forward in between all the brown. Okay, and my last turn of hackle is in the front, bringing it up, and it's grizzly that's front and back. So my last turn of hackle in the application, here is grizzly, and back here is grizzly, and that's helps get our mix the way we want it. In that mix that doesn't allow the brown to totally overpower the grizzly. Now we're going to pull this feather back, bend it back, and wrap a thread head and a jam knot in front of that feather. We call it dog-legging the hackle and wrapping a jam knot. Jamming the dog leg is what we call it. And what we're doing now is we're wrapping our head back, each turn going further back, forcing that feather back. So see how the feather is now standing up in back of the, or in with all the wrapped hackle. We'll deal with that feather here in a minute. Anyway, so now we're back to, look how I built my head. I started wrapping a jam knot in dog leg that hackle back, and it automatically leaves my thread hanging right where it needs to be to do a good whip finish, a whip finish tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply a whip finish. First turn is at the back of the head. Second turn slightly forward. Third, fourth. That's enough. And those all slide underneath and I have a good whip finish. So now I'll just use I'm not really cutting the thread, I'm just using the notch of the partially closed scissors to close that and to also cut the feather. I didn't clip it, I just used the knot. Lay the top of the monofilament loop over the bottom and form a loop like that with a little Y right here. Right now I've got this loop.
You're a little out of focus for some reason. I think maybe you need to be closer. I don't know.
I want you to notice that I laid the top of the loop across the front of the bottom of the loop, and then I split them like this. This is very important. That's the Y we were talking about. And then I hold that right there. Now, I'm just going to take and twist. And it takes a few twists to get it all the way up the way we want it. Okay, I'll give it one more twist. Now this loop is not the way I want it to be. I'm going to tighten it by pulling on the top of the Y, the bottom of the Y, and then I'm going to give it a few more twists. Okay, tighten up the loop back there because that's going to be the loop that I'm going to tie the leader to, the tippet to that goes to the fly. Now you see we're getting the maximum 6 pound is what we have here. Now I'm just going to pull out. Now, the other thing that I was struggling with in the limitations that we have in working with within the confines of a camera, instead of what we really need for space, is the fact that we're trying to do, let's say, a 9-foot or 10-foot leader in an area that is a couple inches across, and it just don't work. So what I'm going to make for you tonight is a miniature leader. This leader, when I get all done with it, it'll be about 4 foot long, maybe even a little bit less. But what we will do is share with you the way to get that one, and then all you have to do is add more material and more twisting time to get it to become a longer leader. So I'm going to start out first by pulling out my monofilament, and I'll just pull out, about 6 feet of it. Would you hold that for me, sweetheart? Yeah, great.
6 feet of mono, 6 pound, 6 feet.
Okay, just set that down over there, I guess. We don't need that now. And what I'm going to do is find the center of this. Okay, good. That's the ends. Let's get to the center. And now you remember the loop. And I'm going to go now to the vise, and we'll start twisting that there. Okay, let me start by taking out the fly. We don't need to have that in the way. And let me smooth this all over just a little bit. There we go. Okay, remember the top of the loop goes over the bottom. Then we want the 2 strands to go top and bottom and divide the monofilament. And then we just start twisting and pulling.
Lower.
Okay, there we go. It's starting, okay, there we go. Now that's what I want to know. I'm going to grab this on top, the top of the Y, and I'm going to pull slack out until I get my loop. Now I'll pull from the bottom. And what I'm doing is pulling slack out until I get my loop down to what the size that I want it to be. You see how that is?
Why do you start out with a loop that's too big?
Because I have never figured out how to start with a loop the size that it needs to be. I have to pull them down. I just can't get it. I can't get the furling process started.
Okay.
Now I want that to be just about like that. Now we're going to start building the leader. And I'm just going to pull and twist. Now I have to stop, and both of these get to flopping around back here, and they tangle around each other. So you have to untangle them. One of the cool things about working in your shop is you can lay everything in one direction or the other. You don't have all this stuff that we're working with in the Zoom studio. But I want you to notice that I'm starting to get a furled leader with a loop on it. And now I'm going to continue pulling and twisting. It's really important here, the left hand, that you don't hold it in a death grip. You hold it just snug enough to keep the Y separated and to keep twisting and pulling. Okay, I'm getting real close to the end now. And I'm getting there. Okay. I don't know if you can. All right, just about. There it is. That's the end of it right there. Now I'm just going to flip this around and throw a quick overhand knot in that guy. So what do we have here? Well, we've got a loop. Where the hell's my hand? There it is. Okay, we got a loop there on this side, folks, going all the way out of here. Now, not typically that would be about 6 foot long, understanding it's only about 3 foot long here. So what are we going to do? We're going to take this loop, turn it to the left, go about a third of the way and fold over the leader material. Now,
The loop being this way.
the loop is to the loop ends up going to the fly, and this is going to be the thicker end of the butt section
Okay.
that I've got right here, but I have to furl that first. Well, the first thing I want to do is these little tag ends here, they're going to drive me nuts. So I'm going to clip them off. There, they're gone. And now if you'll meet me back over at the vise, what we'll do now is do our butt section. Okay, let me remember the top crosses over the bottom. There's our loop. And it's this time you can see the loop is made out of the furled material, one end, but it's only about 2/3. The other third will not get anything furled to it. So I'm getting ready to twist it. Now I want this loop to be a little bit bigger because this is the one that's going to hook around my fly line. So I'll pull some of the slack out of it. There we go. Now I'll continue to furl these two together. All righty. And there we are. It's furled together. Now I'll put a double surgeon's knot right here, and that'll give us our butt section going into the center section of the leader. And the double surgeon's knot okay, good. Now I'm going to move off camera and moisten the loop just a little bit there. And I want you to notice something about tightening the double surgeon's knot. I don't know whether you knew it or not, but if you'll get a lot smoother tightening if you see where I've dropped right here. I've got the short end and the long end. I'm going to tighten up the long end first, then tighten up the short end. You get a lot smoother knot that way. Now I'll use the scissors to get rid of that a little bit. Now the main thing about the surgeon's knot and tightening in that way, it has very little tendency to go off at an angle where if you're not careful about the way you tighten that down, you'll have a little not a 90-degree bend in there, but it'll be a small bend. Now let's go back over here to the A camera, Gretch. All right, here is our butt section. You can see the knot coming through into the middle section of our leader to the other loop that will be attaching the last section in. I'm going to set this aside for a moment. Okay, now I'm going to pull the ends of the Y until I can get them just about. I want that loop to be a little bit smaller because it's just going to be a loop-to-loop connection. And you can see that that's quite a bit smaller. And now I'll go ahead and just continue furling. And now you can see that we have a short one and the long one goes off to the side here another foot or so. I'm just going to turn that around and do a double surgeon's knot. All right, good. Now I'll start to snug it up, moisten the loop. Start to tighten down, drop the short end, tighten the long end, then tighten the short end. Okay, and I'll trim off the short end. Now, Gretchen, if you'll hand me the short end. There we go. Okay, now here's the two ends that we're going to put together.
Down.
I'm shoving that through so I can just do a loop-to-loop connection. And now we have a completed leader, minus the tippet. It comes down to a single 4-pound test. Cut that to the length that you want it to be, and then you attach your tippet material at the end of this part of the leader. Now, what I'm going to do is show you that we've got the leader here. Grab that end. Okay, now, and we just pull the leader all the way through, keep going. On past the butt into the middle section. Coming to the loop-to-loop, going across the screen right now. Now it's into the just flat monofilament. And from there, you trim that flat monofilament to the length you want it to be and put on your tippet. Okay, well, we promised a tip or a trick at the end of each one of these. And what I'm going to do is continue with the leaders and talk to you about, let's see, hang on to that for a minute, Gretchen. And let me get this over here. Hang on to that. All right. What I like to do with the knots, if you'll go back to the S camera, what I like to do with the knots is to put some Solares UV on them. Now, this is some of the lime colored. And you tell me that don't look almost like the egg sac on a caddis. And if you wanted to use that Solares lime green on your flies, it also really makes for a nice smooth covering to the knot, if you will. And then here is the black. I like them both for different reasons. And the Solares product, by the way, we just got this to test out, and that's the black and the lime color. What I wanted to share with you, though, is this little guy right here is available at Harbor Freight for 20 bucks. It's a flashlight. It's a flashlight right here. It's a big light right here with 2 power levels. And right up here is a UV light. And I use that UV light to cure the knots that you just saw on that leader over there. So you can have on the water with this clip on your jacket. You can see working down through your fly box or working down the creek, and as it's getting dark. You can also, if you want to do some on-stream repairs, you've got that UV light right up there. So it's kind of a 3-in-1 sort of a deal for you. And it's 20 bucks.